To be honest, there really hasn't been a lot of horror films this year, and here we have EvilDeadRise, a familiar franchise that I really do enjoy thoroughly, and I was really excited looking forward to this film. It is now available to watch in theaters, but is it worth your time? Well, stick around and find out. EvilDeadRise is a twisted tale of two estranged sisters whose reunion is cut short by the rise of flesh-possessing demons, thrusting them into battle for survival as they face the most nightmarish version of family imaginable. The film stars Lily Sullivan, Alyssa Sutherland, Gabrielle Echols, Morgan Davies, Nell Fisher, and Billy Reynolds McCarthy, and was directed by Cronin, and he's done one other film I've seen called The Hole in the Ground. EvilDeadRise, now this was a film that was really high on my anticipation list. Evil Dead, the 2013 version, that was the first one that I saw out of the Evil Dead franchise. Recently, this past year, I did see the other three films. I haven't seen the series, but I have seen all the films in the franchise, and the Evil Dead 2013 version is still my favorite, I guess mainly because I was introduced to that first. So I was really hoping that this one would really capitalize on the last film that came out 10 years ago. So in this film, it starts out in a lakeside cabin, and we're tricked at first because we see a drone and we think that something really dramatic is about to happen. And a person does get possessed. An entity does grab onto someone. And one thing that I did notice was one of the girls that was in this lakeside cabin, she was reading a book called Wuthering Heights. And I thought that that was very interesting, as I did just recently cover a biography film called Emily on the channel. So I recognized that right away. In the film, it starts off really bloody and gory, and it has a title card, and I will leave it at that to not have any spoilers. And then we get introduced to this family. You have this mother who is separated from her husband. She has 3 children, and her sister has come to town. You can tell the relationship is very much strained between both sisters, but she has came back in her life, and they're going to try to rekindle a relationship and get a little bit closer to each other. And meanwhile, there is a storm brewing, and there is a earthquake about to happen. And these children, they are down in a parking garage because they live in an apartment complex. They live on the 14th floor, I believe. And so they're down in the parking garage, and they've picked up a pizza. They find this bank vault, and it's a hole in the ground, and they find this book. And of course, this book is an iconic book that has been used in all the Evil Dead movies. We all know what is going to happen as far as what's going to happen with this book. And so these kids find it. It was very heartbreaking that they left the pizza. They never do eat the pizza, and this family is very poor because they recently have found out that this apartment complex is going to be condemned, and they're going to have to find another place to live, which is kind of like the main struggles for the characters here. So when the children finally get back up to the 14th floor, the brother ends up taking the Book of the Dead, and he ends up reading from it, and he ends up playing these vinyls that he found as well. And I did like the nice touch they actually had the vinyls in this movie, mainly because vinyls are making a comeback and they're becoming more popular. So I thought that that really actually portrayed to society right now. So I thought that that was a nice touch. And of course, when he reads this passage, and all this stuff is really going on, the Book of the Dead, the vinyl playing, the priest actually saying all these different things, well, then their mother actually becomes possessed. She has an evil presence on her, and then you have these 3 children and the aunt actually trying to get away from this mother. And so this film, it does a really good job in the special effects, the sound design, the way that this film is actually laid out. There's actually paying homage to The Shining, which there is one part where there is some blood that actually sprays out of a elevator, and that really did remind me of The Shining. I've only seen The Shining one time, but that is one actual scene that I'll never forget in that movie. So they did actually pay a little bit of tribute to that. The colors in this film, I love also with the colors that they incorporate in this film, just the spacing aspect. I find that it's more confined. A lot of people really like the cabin style, how they've had it in other movies, and I like it too, but I really think the apartment here, it makes the film feel a lot more closed in. You feel like it's more scarier because how are you going to get away from your possessed mom? She's obviously going nuts. And also they use a peephole in this, which I thought was one of the more scarier things about the film, because you have this little tiny hole and a lot of things are happening outside that apartment. So you have these children really freaking out. They've locked their mom out there into the hallway, and other things are really happening out there. And so it really does make it really flesh out certain scary moments, and I think that's where the coloring and the shading in here, it really does make the film really stand out. The characters, I thought they did a really good job. It actually made you feel like you actually care about these characters and their well-being. Alyssa Sutherland, I thought she did it in a phenomenal job. Her movements, the way that she actually portrayed this scary possessed person, and of course, a lot of the actual uncomfortable things in here, the blood and the gore, and certain scenes that make you go, ah, that's crazy, ooh, that would hurt. And so I really did like that kind of aspect about the film as well. There was one scene that definitely made me, I want to say not necessarily gag, but definitely made me go, ooh, and cover my face a little bit. And there's this one scene where someone actually throws up something, and then they're actually eating something, and that scene right there, I think that was one of the more top scenes of the film, and definitely made me just want to cover my face a little bit. So I really did enjoy that this film, it definitely does go into lots of gore, and it has a lot of creative ways of how it's trying to use this confined space in an apartment. And I think when this film really does use this space to perfection, and the way that everybody is acting, because acting really does actually make this film really flow really well. I don't think that the film is too long. I think that the pacing is done really well, and I think the story overall, it really does mesh very well. And I like that they actually incorporate other horror films as well. And of course, the ending, everything really wraps up really nicely. I like how they actually kind of turn something to the beginning of the film that they actually introduce and actually make it all connect together. And that was really cool too, because it definitely makes it open up for other films, and I'll be really excited to see what else they really come up with. A few other things I did want to point out about this film is something similar that I did notice is the fact that in the 2013 film you had a natural disaster of flooding and a lot of rain, so the characters were actually stuck at this cabin and the roads were closed off. In this one, you have people that are in a high-rise building, the apartment is falling apart, and they just had an earthquake. So they do have that similarity in the natural disaster aspect. And also as far as the blood in this, they use 1,700 gallons of blood, which I really thought was a lot, and it really is. But actually in the Evil Dead 2013 film, they used 50,000 gallons of blood, and it's also been reported they used 20,000 on top of that. So that is absolutely insane. This film, it really does love the blood and gore, and I think that it definitely capitalizes on that. But I think there is less blood here, definitely because of how this film is trying to set up, and I think the way that 2013 is compared to this one, it definitely has a lot of differences in the way that they want to use the blood, and I think some of the weapons that are used in this, they're very creative, and I really did enjoy that as well. I don't really have any negatives for this film. I really enjoyed it for the most part. I would say I would give a score of this a 5 out of 5. I think it's the #1 movie that I've seen all year. I had a lot of fun in the theaters, and I think everybody in my audience had fun as well. And there was a good audience as well. So I really did enjoy this. It was definitely a solid film. If you have not checked it out yet, let me know in the comments, are you going to check it out? But if you have checked it out, what did you think about it? And where does this rank in your Evil Dead franchise? Now for me, I would say that this film is probably second after the Evil Dead 2013 version. And that's kind of where I'm kind of about some of the other films. I'm not really sure where I would rank them, but I would say definitely this one would be my second favorite, as I really did enjoy this film. But thank you guys for watching this review, and I will see you guys on my next review.